What would you do if a stranger from the stars knew your name? If he looked at you the way a father might look at a prodigal son and whispered a word that cracked your heart open? If the word was Jesus. I wasn't looking for a miracle that night. I wasn't even looking for trouble. I was looking for a place where the wind could carry away a scream I didn't want anyone to hear. It was late. The kind of late where the town is not just asleep. It's empty, like a movie set after the crew has gone home and the lights are left buzzing. I left my house, grabbed my keys off the hook by the door, and drove without thinking through streets I knew too well. Past the diner with the flaking red letters. Past the church with the flickering parking lot light. Past the cemetery where the stones lean like tired teeth. I hadn't gone back to that church since my brother died. I used to sit in the back row, under the vent that whistles, and stare at the stained glass until my eyes watered. After we buried him, I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand the hymns, the bowed heads, the way someone always put a hand on my shoulder and said, "He's with Jesus now," as if that was supposed to make me feel anything except heat behind the eyes and a hole in the chest. So I found other places to sit in the dark. That night it was the old county road, the one that runs out past the water tower and the new developments, out until the asphalt narrows and the trees grow in close, and then, eventually, give up and open into fields. Cornfields mostly in the summer. In winter, just black soil and stubble, lines cut into the earth like music staff, but no notes left to play. I parked on the shoulder, killed the engine. The cold air slid in around me and smelled like damp dirt and something metallic. A power line sang somewhere overhead, a thin, steady hum that felt like the sound the sky makes when it's about to snow. I could hear my heartbeat louder than the wind. I didn't plan to get out, but I was tired of being behind glass. The door creaked. Gravel crunched under my boots. I stepped into the air like I was stepping into a story I didn't believe in anymore. The darkness felt close, not suffocating, just heavy, like a blanket that had a smell you almost remember. I walked the ditch line, keeping my feet where the weeds were already flattened by deer. The field beyond was a rippled ocean of black. It had rained earlier, just long enough to slick everything, and the mud grabbed at my soles with a wet sucking sound that pulled at the edges of my patience. Somewhere far away, a dog barked once and then thought better of it. I wanted to talk, but the words wouldn't shape themselves. I wanted to ask the sky where my brother had gone. I wanted to ask what I could have done differently. I wanted to ask if my last words to him mattered as much as they felt like they did, if the slammed door and the silence were as heavy in his chest as they were in mine. But the questions stuck like burrs. And then I saw the lights. At first I thought it was a plane, low, maybe in trouble. A trio of pale points moving together where no road ran, bobbing above the field like someone had hung lanterns on the wind. They weren't carving the dark. They were breathing. That's what it looked like. Like 3 stars had come down to hover above the corn stubble and were exhaling light in slow, even pulses. In, out, in, out. Every hair on my arms prickled. The power line hum went silent, like someone had turned off a switch I didn't know existed. The cold pressed harder, an invisible hand on the back of my neck. I should have turned around. I did. I took 2 steps forward without choosing to. One of the lights drifted closer, not fast, not menacing, just curious. It held the way a hummingbird holds in the air, motionless effort, and in the space between pulses the world sharpened. I could hear the wet whisper of my own breath. I could hear the tiny pops as the frost, faint but present, settled back into the blades of grass it had abandoned when the lights arrived. My truck stuttered behind me. The dome light in the cab flickered twice even though the door was shut, and I heard the radio click on and off, A quiet, soft pop each time, like a tongue clucking in a disapproving mouth. My phone vibrated and then went dead. The watch on my wrist ticked and then did. I whispered okay to no one. Or maybe to whatever was hearing me. When fear comes, it doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just sets a heavy bag in your stomach and sits down on it. I felt the weight. But under the weight was something else I hadn't felt in a long time. Not since I was a kid and hid under a blanket because I wanted to be scared by the storm and safe at the same time. Wonder has a taste. It's like the air changes its mind and becomes something you can drink. The nearest light tilted. It didn't have edges. Up close it was the color of bone seen through skin, a living glow that was quite blue and wasn't quite white, and wasn't anything I had a word for. In the center nothing hung, but the nothing had shape. Like heat over asphalt, except it was cold, and my breath was a small cloud that refused to drift into it. A figure stepped out of that shape, which is the wrong verb because there was no stepping. One moment the space was a wobble, and the next moment there was a person standing there where the field should be saying what fields say, which is stay away. And he didn't obey. He was not like the drawings. He didn't have big black eyes or a tiny mouth. He looked like a man if a man had been sculpted out of night, with just enough light added to sketch in the details. He was taller than me. His hair, if that's what it was, lay close to his skull and caught the light by not catching it at all, like a raven's wing. His skin was the color of a storm delay, not gray, not silver, something that shifts. And his eyes, if I had to describe his eyes, I would say they were the color of water under ice when it knows spring is coming. And somehow, without knowing how, I knew he was a he. He raised a hand, slow, empty palm facing me the way you do to tell a skittish animal you aren't here to take anything from it. He didn't smile. He did something gentler. His face accepted me. Don't be afraid, he said. Only he didn't say it. The words found me the way warmth finds you when you step into sun. It had sound, a tone that lived somewhere between a cello and the first note of a morning bird. But later, when I tried to remember, I couldn't separate what I heard with my ears and what I heard with whatever part of me hears the things you can't prove. There's usually a scream, he added, and this time I heard the humor in it, not mocking, just an observation, like he was telling me the weather. I didn't scream. My mouth was dry. My tongue felt twice the size it should be. I said the only thing that made it across my teeth. Who are you? He tilted his head as if the question were a stone he could balance there. He didn't look up at the lights. He didn't look around. He looked at me like the field and the road and the watching sky were all very well, but inconvenient to the thing that was happening between us. I came because you asked, he said. I didn't ask. Not with your mouth. Something in my chest dropped then. Not like fear. Like a lock releasing. He took a step that wasn't exactly a step, and the light around him shifted. I could see the air wrinkle, like heat above a grill but colder. He was close enough that if I reached out I could have touched him. I did. My hands stayed at my sides, because if they shook I didn't want him to see. Say my name, he said softly. I don't know your name. He smiled then, small and contained, more with his eyes than his mouth. No, he said. Say yours. I swallowed. My throat wasn't cooperating. Evan, I said. It sounded too loud in the field. It sounded like I was a child caught doing something he should. I'm Evan. He nodded like that meant something. Like he'd been waiting. Evan, he repeated. It felt like he was speaking to the core of me, the skin under the skin. You said I asked, I said. What did I ask? He glanced up at the sky, not like he needed to, more like habit. You asked to be healed, he said. You asked where the one you love has gone. You asked why the name that used to be a comfort tastes like metal in your mouth. What? My legs forgot what they were doing. I stumbled half a step back, heels digging into damp soil. I. He took another not step forward, and the space between us felt shorter in more ways than one. Don't be afraid, he said again. I won't push. You asked. I came because where I am, we hear prayers as movements. The way wind bends grass. The way grief changes the color of light. What? I don't pray, I said, and it came out too fast. Too hard. I wanted to take the sharp off it. I could. He accepted that the way he had accepted me. No flinch. No argument ready. You did once, he said. It wasn't a question. And then he said a name I hadn't heard out loud in months. Caleb, he said, and I forgot about breathing. He didn't say it like a password. He said it like a friend would say it if a friend had sat by the bed in a hospital when it was too late and too soon at the same time. He said it like he was handing the name back to me, cleaned of the last words we shouted at each other across a kitchen table. How do you know that? My voice sounded smaller than I felt. Or maybe bigger. Because love leaves shape, he said. Because nothing real goes missing. It only changes where you have to look to find it. What? I shook my head because that's what disbelief does. It flaps around, knocks things off tables, tries to find the seams. This is a dream, I said. This is shock or grief or a trick, and in 5 minutes I'll be back in the truck, and that stupid dome light will be blinking like it always does, and you will go home, he finished for me gently. And you will wash your face. And your hands will smell like this field, and you will sleep and wake and have to do it all again, and the ache will still be there. You asked for someone to sit with the ache. The breath I didn't realize I had been holding came out. I looked at him. I looked at the light that held him and wasn't holding him at all. It pulsed like a living thing. The other two lights moved in a larger circle above us, slow, steady, like planets rehearsing gravity in a place that didn't belong to them. Who are you? I asked again, because names matter, and this was the kind of moment where you bring out all the old tools even if the instructions got lost. His eyes held. We are travelers, he said. We are students. We are sometimes guests and sometimes strangers, and sometimes the ones who do not fit into the words you have. But that is not what you are asking. He paused. When he spoke next, he spoke like a confession that had been waiting for the right air. I am someone who has also learned by losing. And I'm someone who was sent. That word sent loosened another lock I didn't know was there. By who? The question felt loud again. It felt like it was too big for my mouth. By what? He looked over my shoulder at the road, at the field, at the long line of black horizon, where the night pretended it ended. He did not look up at the lights this time. By the one you call God, he said simply. The way you would say the ocean, if you had just walked out of it and your hair was still wet. My skin ran tight. My mind grabbed for the corners of whatever came next and found nothing but the edge of a cliff. That's a big claim, I said, and my laugh didn't know whether it wanted to be there or not. People say that. People say a lot. We do too, he said, and the kindness in it took all the fight out of my laugh. He seemed to think for a moment, as if he were choosing which doorway to use. You asked for the truth, he said quietly. If you'd asked for comfort, I would have brought you a softer blanket. I stood there, the cold slipping under my shirt and climbing my spine, and I realized that disbelief had done its first work. It had emptied me just enough that there was space for something else to fit. I didn't believe him. And also, part of me did. The part that didn't care about proof at that exact second. The part that wanted to know what came next. But that was just the beginning. He lifted his hand, and the light replaced itself with a different light, dimmer, warmer, not any color I could have seen on a paint chip at the hardware store. It was the color of a candle, if a candle could remember the first fire. He didn't reach to touch me, not really. His hand stopped a foot from my shoulder. It was enough. The air between his palm and my shirt, filled with a pressure like a summer storm, tells you it's on its way. "Will you let me show you something?" he asked. "What?" "The way forgiveness feels when it is a place you live in," he said. "Not a thing you have to prove you deserve." My lips went dry. I started, and then stopped, because if I said I didn't believe in forgiveness, my mouth might fall apart, and if I said I did, I might start crying and not stop. "It's okay," he said. "You don't have to do anything. Just breathe." So I breathed. Or tried. The first breath was a swallow. The second had a hitch in it. By the third, I could feel my breath enter me and then leave, and the leaving didn't panic me like it had been panicking me for months. His hand hovered, and the part of me that had been clenched since that phone call, the one at 2 in the morning from an unknown number that became known forever, unclenched a fraction. "Look," he said. I didn't see visions. No slideshow of my sins, and better days flickered in the sky. What I saw was the field and his face, and my breath fogging like a tender ghost. But inside the circle of that field, time did something kind. It opened. I was back in the kitchen with the late light slanting in and Caleb laughing because we'd burned the pancakes, and he said it was okay because he liked the edges crispy. I was holding a baseball that smelled like old leather and grass in my father's palm as he pressed it into mine and said, "Keep your eye on the seam." I was 12 and my mother was humming an old hymn while she folded towels, and I didn't realize it was embedding itself inside me like a seed. I was standing by a grave with dirt under my nails because I wanted to do something with my hands. I was sitting in the back of the church under the whistling vent, wanting to tear the stained glass out with my fingers, and also wanting to curl up inside it and sleep. "Forgiveness is not forgetting," the stranger said. "It never was. It is returning. Returning to the part of you that knows you were loved before you knew how to refuse it." I didn't realize the tears had started until the cold burned them into tracks on my cheeks. My knees got interested in the ground. I let them be. Mud took me like a friend. He moved as if to kneel, then stopped and let me decide to do it alone. I was grateful for that. For the allowing. I said things I said into my hands. I could feel wet and grit. My voice didn't care how it sounded anymore. I said things that pushed him away, and then he was gone, and I don't get to fix it. I don't get to take them back. The air moved around his words. "Nothing said in love goes wasted," he murmured. "It changes rooms. It keeps breathing, even when you can't see where it went." "That's not what I said," I shot back, a small reflex in the old direction, the old fight. "I said ugly things. I told him I was done, that I wouldn't help him anymore. I told him he was on his own, and then the sentence stopped the way an engine stops when it's not your car to drive anymore. He didn't hurry me. He let the field be a field, and the night be a night where this conversation could happen. Finally he said, "Do you know what we call the word you use when you speak of the one named Jesus?" My heart stumbled. The name was an ember I hadn't wanted anyone to blow on. "Why would you?" He waited. "Why would you know that name?" I finished, pushing the words out as if they were heavy with some responsibility I didn't want. "Because it is one of the names that taught us what love does when it puts on a body," he said. Everything in me lifted and dropped at the same time. High and low. Light and gravity. It was too much and not enough. "You're telling me." 2 beats. 3. You're telling me you what believe in Jesus. He tilted his head like a bird listening under snow. Belief is a polite way to talk about what changes you, he said. Where I come from, we do not argue beliefs as much as we attend to what we know by its fruit. He leaned closer, not with his body but with his attention. Being looked at like that felt like sunlight on skin that had forgotten what warmth was. We have learned many names for the one, he said. Some of them sing. Some of them do. The word you use, Jesus, is a name we know because when the one you call by that name exhaled here, the sound did not stay here. Sound travels where we live. It travels in ways you do not count with distance. I held myself very still. The field, the truck, the night, all of it waited to see if I would run or say yes to something I hadn't asked for. I didn't run. What do you mean by sound? I asked, because I had to make him translate this into a kind of physics or poetry I could hold without getting burned. He seemed pleased by the question. We listen, he said. We listen the way your old ones used to listen to the ground for hooves. We listen to the fabric. We felt the echo when the word you speak of took flesh in your dust. He closed his eyes for a moment, and when he opened them they were bright. It changed the pitch of everything. The pitch, I repeated, because this was a language I could almost speak. The ache in my chest throbbed with something like a new kind of blood. Like a key chain. He smiled with his eyes again. Exactly, he said. And the key change we heard was mercy. The wind found a new path over the field and laid a shiver down my back. That's your shock, I said, half aware of how I was still treating this like a debate I could win. That you heard something, that the love you wrestle with became a person on your world, he finished for me. And that the person is not gone. My mouth went dry again. Not gone, I said, and the words tasted like I'd stolen them from someone who still believed the things I used to. He died. He walked, he said. Through death. We felt the shift. And it did not stay in one story. It became a door in many. To us, the name you use is like a bridge across a river that was always too wide. A bridge we did not build and cannot break. I stared at him. You're telling me you have his story. On your wherever you're from. We have our own stories, he said. We have our own mistakes and kindnesses and ways. We failed the small and the weak. We have learned our own songs. But about this, we do not write poems. We do not carve monuments. We measure the change by how we treat one another when the night is long. He reached his hand forward again, hovering it near my shoulder without touching, the air warm between us in a way that made no sense and all the sense at once. You are carrying a weight you think will make you righteous if you refuse to put it down, he said. The one you call Jesus has never asked for that weight. I didn't know what to do with my hands. My stubby nails had dirt under them and they shook. People asked, I said. People at the church. They asked without asking. They wanted me to come back. They wanted me to say the things. They wanted me to be okay. And what did you want? He said, and the question peeled me. I wanted someone to sit with me while I wasn't, I said. I wanted to stop waking up at 2:13 in the morning and smelling his sweatshirt because it was the only thing left that felt like him. I wanted for that one thing I said to not be the last thing that mattered. His gaze softened and deepened at the same time. It wasn't, he said. Caleb does not exist in your last words. He exists in the whole of your love. He is being held by the one who shaped him with delight. The name you cannot stand right now is a grace. It is not a leash. I shook my head, but the gesture had less resistance now. If that's true, why doesn't he answer? Why is there nothing when I talk? You aren't talking, he said gently. You are bargaining. That is not wrong. But it is loud. Listening is smaller. He paused, then added, for us, when we say his name, we listen. We do not demand. We do not inventory. We make room. I remembered then, without wanting to, a Sunday when I was 7. I was in the second to last pew because that's where we always sat, and the sunlight was coming through the stained glass at just the right angle to turn the dust into something holy looking. The pastor had said the name Jesus and then had been quiet just for a beat, and in that breath I had felt, what? A sense that the room was fuller. That's how I described it to my mother later. It felt like the room got fuller, and she had ruffled my hair and said, maybe that's him saying hello. I swallowed. The cold hurt in a good way. I looked at the stranger. Say his name, I said. I didn't know I was going to ask for that. It fell out of me. He nodded as if he had expected that my heart would beat its way to that request eventually. He let his attention gather. He did not close his eyes. He did not bow his head. He simply said, with the kind of reverence that does not need to be showy because it has met what it reveres, Jesus. And the field listened. There was no light show. No chorus. The 2 lights above us continued their slow, patient orbits. The light around him pulsed once, and in that pulse, the hum of the power line came back for a breath and went again, like it had remembered a duty and then remembered a Sabbath. What changed was the space inside my ribs. I did not feel an answer. I felt a presence that did not require one. He didn't fill the silence. He let it be. Do you know what he would say to you if you could hear him with your ears? The stranger asked after a while. I shook my head. I'm not sure I want to know, I said, because the shame I believed in had a way of writing its own scripts and leaving them on my pillow. He would say, the stranger murmured, come and eat. Something in me laughed then. A laugh made of hurt and hope and hunger. That's it, I said. Not why did you screw up, not explain yourself. Not do better. None of that would feed you, he said. And the first thing mercy does is feed what is starving. Memory flashed muscle memory. The feel of a hand on my shoulder. A meal after a funeral where no one was hungry, but everyone ate. The way food tastes when grief has made the world bland, and salt becomes something like a prayer. He watched the thoughts move across my face, not invading, just noticing. Where I come from, he said quietly, we call him by a name that translates poorly in your mouth. The closest you have is bridge, or thread, or the way through. The one who does not abandon. His gaze went softer. He walks our harvest fields when we are cruel to each other, and his presence interrupts our cruelty. That is how we know it is him. And he sent you, I said, the word slow, like stepping across a creek on stones that were only partially above the water. To me. To whoever asks, he said. Tonight that was you. The wind shifted again, bringing with it the smell of ozone, strong enough that it made the back of my tongue tingle. The lights above us adjusted their distance, as if they had been given a time that was almost up, but were willing to give a little more. His attention flicked to them, and then back to me. The look said we're okay for a few more minutes. What do I do now? I asked a little too quickly. I had lived in the land of doing, and it was hard to leave it. You take the next kind step, he said. It will be small enough to ignore and big enough to change a life. That's not specific, I shot back, but the fight in it was only a shape I knew how to wear. It didn't fit as well as it used to. It will be, he said, and there was such calm in the certainty that it took my arguing half a step out at the knees. I wanted to stand up. I did. He moved like he would offer a hand, and then did. He let me find my feet with my own clumsy gratitude. Mud released me reluctantly, like a friend I didn't want to stop hugging. He looked at me as if he were memorizing my face the way you do when you know you might not see someone again for a while. "I wish I had something better to bring you than words," he said. "Where I'm from, words are how we weave. They hold. But sometimes a touch is a kindness nothing else can mimic." He lifted his hand again. This time slowly, he reached until his palm was almost on my shoulder. He waited, a question floating in that tiny space. I nodded. The warmth when it came was not like heat. It was like recognition. Every muscle in my back relaxed one notch. The feeling went through me, past me, into the field and beyond it. It didn't fix anything. It made me sure that fixing was possible. He held his hand there for a breath and then withdrew. The air felt suddenly cold and regular in the absence of him. He looked at me serious. "There are 3 small ways the one you named taught us to live," he said. "We try to keep them, though we often do not. 1. Care for what is smaller than you. There is no weight class in mercy. 2. Tell the truth even when it cracks something. Truth is a midwife. It hurts and then something is born. 3. Release debts before you feel ready. You will never feel ready. Release them anyway. You will be lighter, and so will the ones who owe you." I nodded like a student who knows he will forget half of what was said and hopes he can remember the half that matters. "Can I ask you something?" I said because it was my turn. "You can ask me many somethings," he said, the corners of his eyes creasing in a way that made me want to laugh because, whatever he was, he knew humor was a tool we both understood. "Why me?" It came out small and huge at the same time. "There are 1,000 people in this county more faithful than me. There are people who pray every day and mean it. There are people who don't say ugly things to their brothers. Why take your ship light, whatever that is? Why come to a field to talk to a guy who doesn't even go inside the church anymore?" His gaze didn't move from my face. "Because you asked," he said again. "And because you will tell this story with your scratched voice and your shivering hands, and someone who thinks they are out of reach will hear it and they will not be." We stood there in the nowhere, and it felt like the center of everything for a second longer. The 2 lights above us drifted further apart, and the space they made between them looked like a shape I could have knelt in if kneeling wasn't something you needed to do with your knees. "I don't know how to end this," I admitted, the awkwardness of goodbye pressing in. "Do I say something? Is there, do you?" "Make space," he said. "When you are tempted to clutch, open your hands. When you are tempted to perform, be quiet. When you are tempted to punish, eat. Feed someone else. Then feed yourself." He paused, then added, "When you say his name, don't add anything after it." He searched my face to see if I understood. "Listen." I nodded because I could do that. Or try. Trying suddenly seemed like an offering, not an admission of failure. He looked past me to the road again, and his attention extended to the lights above us. He said something in a wordless sound that was not any language I knew, a note that felt like when you run your finger around a glass rim and it sings. The lights brightened in answer, then softened. "I will not be here when you are ready to turn around," he said. "That is how these stories are told. But I will be near the next moment when you ask." "Will I see you again?" I asked, the child in me stepping out of its corner without asking permission from the skeptical adult. "Yes," he said. "But not like this." He smiled lightly. "You will not need the lights." It was a line that would keep me awake nights, but in a way that let me wake in the morning with the feeling that waking mattered. He stepped back toward the place where the air had first wrinkled. The light around him sighed. The field seemed to shore itself up, as if it had decided to be a field again instead of a sanctuary. He raised his hand again, but this time it wasn't apology or assurance. It was simple farewell. Evan, he said. The way he said my name, this time, made me think of the first time my mother had said it. Or the last time. Thank you, I said. It didn't feel like enough. It felt like the only appropriately sized thing. He paused. One more thing, he said, as if he had just remembered something crucial he'd refused to write on a list because lists make things too easy. When you go home, take your phone out, scroll to the last message from him you haven't been able to listen to, and listen to it. No more rituals around it. Just listen. And when you are done, say his name out loud and say mine inside, and then say the other one out loud again. Then go drink water. Say your name inside, I echoed, because I didn't have it yet. You will, he said. You will not have to strain. He glanced up. It is time. Something eased. Something tensed. The lights pulsed like breaths. He stepped into the air that was not air, and the air held him like I've seen the ocean hold a swimmer who has lived in it his whole life. There was no blast of wind. No sonic boom. There was only the power line humming like a small content thing, and the far-off bark of a dog who had decided it was safe to speak again. The lights rose enough that my neck hurt to follow them. They dimmed the way a deep breath goes invisible inside a chest. I stood in the empty field. The mud was mostly my mud now. My knees were damp. My hands stung. The watch on my wrist ticked, and then jumped ahead 23 minutes like it had been asleep and had to catch up. The dome light in the truck burned in a steady glow that almost looked like a candle. I walked back to the road like a person who had been given new legs and didn't want to jinx it by moving too fast. Every sound felt like a gift I didn't know how to open without making a mess. The latch on the truck door clicked. The seat was cold and held the shape I had left. The key slid into the ignition with a small sound that convinced me I loved the mundane world more than I had admitted. I sat in the stillness a handful of heartbeats longer and did what he had asked. I scrolled to the message with my brother's name on it. I had refused to listen to it. I had in fact sworn I never would. It was a shrine and a threat and an accusation and an anchor. All of it. I tapped the little triangle and the old cheap speaker in my truck did what it is built to do. Hey, my brother's voice said, a little breathless, a little messy, alive. I'm good. I'm trying. You were right about, well, you were right. I wanted to say, I love you, okay? I'm gonna come by tomorrow if that's cool. If not, it's fine. It's cool. Okay. Okay. The message clicked off. The soft stop of it unstitched me and stitched me at the same time. I twisted the key. The engine caught. The heater coughed and then gathered itself and blew a warm breath across my face that smelled faintly of dust and something sweet I couldn't place. Maybe dried leaves. Maybe the last time we had driven to the lake and eaten peaches and let the juice run down our wrists. At home, I did what he had said. I said my brother's name out loud. I said the stranger's name inside, except, as promised, I didn't know it yet, and the thing I said inside was less a name and more a feeling that matched the warmth that had moved through me. And then I said the other one out loud. I said Jesus and didn't add anything, and I listened to the room get fuller. The next morning, I did what he told me to do without telling me. I took the next kind step. I called my father and said I was sorry and didn't explain myself. He cried in a way I had never heard in my life and then tried to swallow it like a mistake, and I told him it was okay and that we could be messy without apologizing for being messy. I went to the little day shelter on Maple and poured soup and didn't make it about me. I sat on the back pew under the whistling vent and didn't sing and didn't run. The hole in my chest did not vanish. It learned a new shape. Days turned into a way to practice listening. I listened to the sound of tires in the rain and to the apology in my neighbor's voice when his dog dug up my garden. I listened to the click of the sprinkler as it rotated past the blown-out section of fence I kept promising to fix. I listened to the way silence is not empty when you let it not be. When I said the name that used to hit my mouth like metal, it tasted like the penny you suck when you are a kid because you like the tang, and it also tastes like home. I went back to the field once. Not the next night. Later, the mud had hardened into a skin you could crack with your heel. The weeds had forgotten my knees and had rewritten themselves into a tapestry. There was a ring in the field where the stubble lay bent in a way that didn't match wind. If I had wanted to make something of it, I could have. I could have taken pictures and posted them. I did. It was better as a place where I could stand in the late afternoon light and say nothing and be answered by the feeling of being seen. One night I sat on my back steps with a glass of water because he had told me to drink water, and it seemed like a good way to be in the world. The stars were out in a way they get to be when the humidity is low and the temperature drops enough to make the sky fragile. I thought about how he had said I wouldn't need the lights. And he was right. I don't know how I know it, but I do. It's like when you hear a note and you can hum it because now it lives in your throat too. I don't pray for answers anymore. I listen. I say the name and I wait for the room to get fuller, and sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't, and both are okay. I've learned that faith is not a staircase, but a field at night where the air hums and something bigger than me sits down beside me and says, "Let's breathe." There are still days when I feel like the only thing keeping me upright is a thin thread. On those days I imagine a bridge. Not a big city bridge, but a footbridge over a stream in the woods where the planks creak and you can see minnows flicking in the water beneath you. I imagine stepping onto it with my eyes closed. And I say my brother's name out loud. I say the other name inside. Then I say the one that changed the pitch of everything. Sometimes, if I listen hard enough, I hear laughter in the field where there is no one. It's not creepy. It's relief. It's the laugh of someone who has finally put down a weight they didn't realize was a choice. And sometimes, I think about the fact that someone who has walked through death and didn't stay their sins kids like us out into the dark in borrowed light to tell people to eat when they're starving and to stop punishing themselves for being human. Maybe this won't shock you the way it shocked me. Maybe you've been listening longer than I have and you knew this already. That love wears a human face and then refuses to take it off when the human part stops working. Maybe this has always been the worst-kept secret in the universe. But for me, it was new. It was a key change when all I'd been able to hear was the same 4 notes over and over again. It was a stranger calling me by my name and handing it back to me clean. It was the night becoming home. And on good nights, when the air is cold and the world is quiet and the dome light in my truck is being its stubborn self, I think I can still feel, in the place between pulses, a hand hovering near my shoulder. Not touching. Asking permission. I say yes. But what I didn't know then was that this encounter was only the beginning.